Hello everyone, can you hear me? We will start the webinar soon, like now. So hello and welcome to this first ROC webinar hosted by Eurocities and Julie's Bicycle. For your information, we are recording this webinar, so we will make the file available in the next couple of days. So just for an introduction, a bit about us. I am Cécile from Eurocities, project officer. Eurocities is the network of major European cities. We were founded in 1986 and we are based in Brussels. We represent more than 140 cities all over Europe. And my co-host today is Lucy from Julie's Bicycle. Julie's Bicycle is a charity based in London and working on culture and sustainability. Together with 30 other organizations, we are partners in the ROC EU-funded project. ROC stands for Regeneration and Optimization of Cultural Heritage in creative and knowledge cities. The project is considering cultural heritage as a tool for urban regeneration, and we are testing a circular model of transformation of historic city centers in 10 European cities, including Bologna and Turin, who are present today in today's conversation. We put together this program of webinars to inform the audience about the ROC project and the many topics we touches upon. So ROC in general aims to demonstrate how cultural historical city centers can become laboratories to test new models of urban regeneration and therefore leading the urban transition. And ROC has developed a new approach combining technical, organizational and social innovations to move from a linear to a circular urban regeneration model. Collaborative regeneration initiatives are part of this approach, and today we will discuss urban commons and how it relates to urban governance. So what are urban commons? Urban commons consider urban space as a space of the commons, so a space of social interaction and where resources are collectively owned or shared between communities. These resources are said to be held in common and can include everything from natural resources and common land to software. In the new city governance model that is emerging, where cities are considered themselves as commons, public authorities act as facilitator of these co-management structures throughout the urban territory, and they also enable the citizens to actively take part in the regeneration of their habitat, or to improve their lifestyle, or to develop the community they belong to. So in a moment, in his introduction, Professor Christian Iaione from the University Luis in Rome will tell us more about the commons theories and principles and how they can be applied to urban governance. And then we will explore initiatives and experiments that have been tested in 3 different cities, in Bologna and Turin in Italy, and also in Ghent in Belgium. So Bologna has been a frontrunner in urban governance and collaborative practices, notably with its experience with the regulation on public collaboration between citizens and the city for the care and regeneration of urban commons, and with the legislation Collaborare e Bologna. There is a slight change of plan in the agenda as Giovanni Ginocchini is now unable to join us, so I will present the regulation later on, but maybe Christian can complement as he participated in the design of the regulation. The reason why this regulation of the commons in Bologna gained so much attention was because it was the first of its kind ever being developed and was then adopted with variation by a large number of cities in Italy, including Turin. Giovanni Ferrero, who is project manager in the municipality of Turin, will let us know more about the Turin experience through a particular project that is running, the Co-City Urban Innovative Action. But Bologna's influence has crossed countries and also reached Belgium. The city of Ghent commissioned in 2017 a study that led to the Commons Transition Plan. This plan describes the role and responsibilities for the city in reinforcing citizens' initiatives. It documents the emergence and growth of the commons in the city of Ghent, offers some explanation of why this is occurring, and determines what kind of public policy should support commons-based initiatives. But then I will let Dirk Holmans from the think tank Oikos tell you more about commons in Ghent and the city's journey. So before we start, some housekeeping information. You can find several icons on your GoToWebinar panel. There is a little hand. If you pass your mouse on it, it says raising hands. So if you click on this icon, you can, just to make sure that you can hear me okay. Normally everybody should hear me fine, I hope. Yes, I see. There is another icon, asking questions. So you can use this to ask questions in the Q&A at the end, but you can also use it to flag the issues you are having during the webinar, and then we can monitor them. If you accidentally click the X in the dialog box, you will be taken out of the webinar, but you can rejoin by just following the link in the confirmation email you received. So enough from me. I hope everything is okay, so we can just start. Christian, if you're fine, the floor is yours for a 15-minute introduction to the cities as a commons, and I will now make you a presenter so we can see you.
All right, so thank you for this invitation. It's an honor and it's a pleasure, as it's coming back from the US, and I started working on the idea of the urban commons after I developed this theoretical framework in Bologna. And yes, Cecile was right. I'm partly responsible for the regulation, the drafting of the regulation. In Bologna, I also led a project called Co-Bologna that, after the drafting and the approval of the regulation, was responsible for experimenting some of the most advanced features of the regulation, and also the evaluation. I think the first evaluation, and so far maybe the only evaluation, of the first 300 pacts of collaboration signed by the city of Bologna. And then I moved to Turin, where I'm cooperating with Gianni Ferrero, that you will hear in a little while, on the Co-City project. But also I'm also working with Ghent through the Civic State Urbact project on the same issue. So in some ways, this shows that the ROC project, as much as the Co-City UIA project and the Civic State project, are timely projects. They are right on time, and actually they are the most forward-looking projects, in my opinion, in terms of rethinking the urban governance, because that's what the urban commons are about. To me, they are a way to rethink, as Cecile brilliantly said, the way assets are managed, but in a way it's also how it's a tool to rethink the urban economic development paradigm, and that's why you need to change the urban governance. So I just want to briefly say that the commons have to do with economic change. It's about bringing to the city economic diversity, transform the city from a place where only public and private operators are present to a place where also another economic actor is present, which is the community. And of course, this does not have to do something that is carried out against the public or the private sector, but it's more like, making room, making space, and connecting, and making sure that these new actors, these new economic actors, the local communities, are able to cooperate with the public sector on one side, and possibly also with the local private sector. So it's about basically working on the unused and underused capacity that is present in the city. It's in our first iteration, we spoke about a lot, and we practiced a lot on reusing and reactivating abandoned buildings or regenerating urban space. But now what we are witnessing is that something that I only dreamed of and wrote about a few years ago, more than 12 years ago. Infrastructures are being rethought and redesigned in their governance as commons. We see more and more energy networks, Wi-Fi networks that are started to be that cities are starting to rethink as commons, enabling therefore the collective action of local communities, and making sure that these communities can use manage, and even own some of these networks. So one of the key elements and one of the key design principles of this, of course, is the recognition of the right of self-organization of these communities, and also the recognition of their role as an economic actor animated by an interest that is not just the interest of someone that has in mind the profit. Sustainability is key, but the point of this new actor is that reinvestment of any kind of profits, of any kind of surplus that is generated by these economic actors is reinvested in some other services, in some other activities that are needed and necessary for the general interest. And so, for these reasons, I think that these communities, they produce public value as much as public administrations, and that therefore we should make sure that the kind of agreements, like the pacts of collaboration designed conceived by the regulation in Bologna and in Turin, are considered as a form of cooperation between two public value actors, public value producing actors. This is very important in legal terms and from an EU legal standpoint. And with the city of Turin, and I hope that Gianni will elaborate more on this, but with the city of Turin, we are working within the EU legal framework to make sure that there is recognition for this new kind of partnerships that are innovating the way these networks assets are managed. The other element that I think it's key, it's a key design principle is the fact that the administrations, the CDO should act as an enabling platform, making sure that experimentations are run in the city, that subunits within the city are identified in terms of geographical scope or personal scope, like groups of people or areas in the city are identified, because this is not something that can be scaled up right away to the city level. We need to work neighborhood by neighborhood, group of people by group of people, targeting the right needs and the right answers, because there is the standard way of doing carrying out activities of general interest that has to stay in the picture. This is not a way to substitute, to allow retreat of the state. This is a way to integrate and again create some diversity in terms of possible solutions to produce public value. One key element in this is that we set some goals, we give some directionality to these projects. It doesn't have to do about just creating urban commons. It needs to be about creating new jobs, new skills, new opportunities that face the daunting challenges that cities are called to face, like becoming more resilient, more sustainable, more diverse, making room and welcoming new city inhabitants in order to make sure that cities are wealthier in human capital, which is one of the key elements for urban prosperity. The last element is that as being cities also the place where most of the technological and digital transition is happening, we need to make sure that even the smart city narrative is somehow contaminated by this. I call this the principle of tech justice, or the Internet of Humans. We need to make sure that all the technological advancements that are now flowing through the policies of cities are somehow recognizing also the right to digitally act, the right of communities to digitally act in the city. So, point being that you can, this way, make sure that some of the boom created by the digital economy and the value produced by the digital economy is captured by also local communities, by making sure that the data are again used, managed, and even owned by local communities. All this information, all the contents that I've been talking about in the last 10 minutes, and I will end here so that I make room for the others to talk, is contained in this open book that we produced as Louis Labkov, the Laboratory for the Governance of the City as a Commons, which is composed of 3 key pillars. One is the basically it's the report on the evaluation of several policies in different cities in the world. The other is called the co-cities protocol. It's about the design principles, the tools, and also the co-city project cycle that we codified, observing all the different cities. And there is a third pillar that is composed by the key foundational or key notes or foundational papers by some of the key figures in the world of the urban commons. Sheila Foster, Michel Bowens, David Bollier, Silke Erfrisch, and many others. You can find it online on the webpage of the Co-Cities project, which is commoning.city. Cecile, if you think I can stop here, or I can answer a few questions.
I think we could listen to you explaining the commons for a longer time, but maybe we will take the questions at the end. I see that, but thank you very much. It gave us already a very interesting insight on the world of the commons, and probably we are now better equipped to understand what is happening in the cities that are implementing this new governance system. I see that Giovanni Ginocchini from Bologna, the director of the Bologna Urban Center, just arrived. Okay. So I think I will let him present the Bologna regulation because he knows it better than I do. Giovanni, if you're fine, I will make you now a presenter so we can also see your screen if you have any slides. Otherwise, I can also reuse mine. Hop. So since 2014, Bologna is implementing an urban innovation model based on civic collaboration. So this means that the public administration are not only governing on behalf of the citizens, but also with them. And this model is based on the 2 concepts of the city as commons and citizens as a source of energy, of talent, of creativity. And Bologna set up a policy framework for managing all these new collaborative projects. And this is the regulation of collaboration between citizens and the city for the care and regeneration of urban commons. And Giovanni, I can unmute yourself so we can hear you.
Okay,
and you can start the presentation. It's Valeria.
Hi, yes, but Giovanni is with me, so he will start to speak with you right now. So just a second that we are trying to arrange everything. So could you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you well.
Okay, perfect. So I leave the floor to Giovanni. Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, good morning, everybody. Yes, I will tell you something about our regulation, even if I think that Christian, that was one of the author of the regulation of Bologna, could be better than me explain what was the idea behind the first regulation. And so
Christian, don't hesitate to compliment. Huh?
Sorry?
I was telling to Christian that he can compliment what you say. There's no problem.
Yes, I think that he can be more precise about what was the philosophy behind the regulation of Bologna. We started to work some years ago when we understood that our way to involve citizens should be renewed. Usually in Bologna we had hello.
Yes, can you hear us?
Yes. Sorry. So we started to work on the new regulation because we understood that our way to involve citizens should be renewed. We started to work because from the bottom of the citizens groups and association, there was a new energy. They wanted to play a new role on the care of urban commons, and we wanted to build new tools to renew this relationship that in Bologna is something very particular. So the idea was to start with some experimental work in 3 different parts of the cities. One was the renewal of a little green areas in the north of the city. Another one was the care of porticos. The idea was to understand how the different ways that this experimentation were building the different ways of relationship between the administration, citizen, group of citizens, and association we were building could be linked to a new way of working of the public administration. So this was the work that Christian made with the group of people inside and outside the Bologna municipality, and I think that now we can say that we started a new way of working of the public administration. It was very important the work they did inside the municipality. I think this was more important than the work they did together with the association and the citizens. I don't know if you have some particular question about the Bologna regulation. I don't know if you want to know something particularly.
Maybe I have a question, maybe more for Christian. So LabGov worked on the Co-City Bologna to implement this regulation. Can you take us through a bit this process? How did it work? How did you collaborate? Why was it so successful in the end?
They worked in 2 different phases. The first phase was in the building of the regulation. I think that they the work was successful in the first phase because they had different expertise. They are able to link the juridical part of the very important juridical expertise that that was important for the new regulation, together with an idea of a political approach that was that we need to involve and empower people from the bottom, and I think they were very the third very important aspect is that they were very linked to the top management of the city, and so I think this was very important for the first phase. The second phase of the work they did, it was, I think, more challenging. It was more difficult because together we tried to put in practice the 5 helix approach. So the idea that we have to work for the future to face the challenge of the city together with the institution, research centers, business sector, association, third sector, and informal group of citizens. And I think this is the idea to build not only a new regulation but a new governance of the city based on this similar approach. And this phase was the work was more difficult. I think that Christian can explain better than me the work they did, and also how was it difficult to build not only a regulation but to try to build a new governance in some very very challenging issue of the contemporary city. That are some issues that are very important in Bologna, but are very typical of the different European cities. Just to add the last sentence, that what was very new in the Bologna regulation was the capacity to involve informal group of citizens in the care of urban common. So this was before a big barrier, and I think the success of the new regulation is because they, with this work, they break the barrier between informal group of citizens and public administration. I think that this was very revolutionary for Bologna. We have a big tradition of very formal participation. We have a lot of tools to build a relationship and collaboration between associations and institutions. I think that was very important in the work they did, that they find a way to involve informal group of citizens in our collaborative ecosystem.
So if I can jump in there and elaborate on Giovanni's key insights. These pacts of collaboration, as many other by now legal innovations that are happening in cities, were conceived by now 7 years ago to make sure that the city administrations could have new legal tools to cooperate with the social environment. Not just composed of, as Giovanni was saying, just the established organizations like the organizations from the third sector, but also the informal groups Giovanni was mentioning. This gave a language, a legal language, a legal tool to the cooperation also with this distributed world of innovators in cities. They take many labels: city makers, urban innovators, social innovators. Point being that this is the unorganized public, as Carol Rose would call it. It's an energy that is there and that needs to be enabled through policies and through legal instruments that can grant them the right to use, own, manage some of the infrastructure in order to do one key thing here, which is, and that's the further innovation that we attempted. And we called on these social movements and these social environment, social actors, to start thinking not anymore as just outsourcer of the city administration, but rather as social, and I would say, and I wrote, much like civic entrepreneurs, which means that when you act as an entrepreneur, you need to be more keen on taking risks. This was another bet that was made here. That's why I was mentioning in my introduction the importance of interpreting this as a form of making room for economic diversity. The approach is to enable, so that at some point, through this investment, through this enabling action of the city, at some point, these actors would be able to walk and stand on their feet. And so that's why the language of the public community partnerships that we brought and that we elaborated in doing is becoming more and more one key insight that needs to be internalized and embedded in every language when we speak, because this is a way, it also triggers in lawyers in cities, in operators in cities, the idea that we are going beyond the classical divide of public-private partnerships, and we are going towards these public-community partnerships. And what partnerships are about is again a common venture in which different actors share the risk. That's the point. We need to make sure that there are actors that are interested in taking these risks. And as an exchange, the city is putting at disposal some assets, some resources. But point is that also we need to make sure that these actors produce this value, put something on the table that is measured. And that's another key point of the regulations on collaboration, that we measure the public value. Sometimes it's not just about the monetary value. It's about the time and the investment, which is an economic dimension, which can, all factors considered, could result into demonstrating that these actors are taking a lot of risk because they're putting on the table more resources than maybe the in-kind or the monetary resources that cities are putting. So the other 2 points that I want to make is it's important, as Giovanni was mentioning, that we adopt this approach of the quintuple helix. So innovation in cities has been said by Stanford scholars that is the production of the triple helix, public, private, and knowledge institutions like universities. What Bologna, Turin, and many other cities in the world are demonstrating is that instead innovation in cities is the production, is the product, is of a process that brings to the table, makes them cooperate 5 actors: public, private, knowledge, social sector, which is the NGOs, the established NGOs, and the innovators, and the social innovators, and the urban innovators. We need to recognize the right of these communities to be one political and economic actor, because it's important not only in political terms, but also in legal terms. The last point that I want to make is the way you make these actors come together. And that's the other key issue here at stake that kind of the regulation challenged. The idea that the only way of communicating with the outside world for City Hall is just to make sure that you have a competition. Instead, what these regulations are demonstrating is that you can create a cooperation, a collaborative dialogue, not a competitive dialogue, a collaborative dialogue through co-design processes in which you bring together all these different actors to enable the action of these civic actors. And this is key because it means changing the procedures, changing the way the administrative acts are produced, the way and also recognizing the fact that sometimes you do not need to grant exclusive use rights, that you can make sure that, as Naples has demonstrated, you can also have other approaches in which the use is shared by different actors and you have validation mechanisms, accreditation mechanisms. So the legal hacks, the legal tools can be different, but the legal principles, design principles, basically fundamentally are always the same, is always the same, which is creating this collaborative dialogue and going beyond competition as the only principle that can make sure that cooperation between city or public administrations on one side and the outside world is designed, is constructed.
Thank you, Christian, for this compliment. I want also to give maybe a bit of some results that the regulation managed to have in Bologna since its adoption in 2014. I read that around 636 proposals have been presented and around 470 collaboration pacts have been signed between the city and the citizens. Most of the areas of the collaboration proposal are around intervention for the care of the commons, but also social inclusion activities, revitalization of city spaces. And the submitters, so the citizens who actually submitted the collaboration proposals, are mostly legally recognized associations, but also single citizens and non-organized groups. So this proves that it's not only for organized groups, but indeed for also citizens. There is a portal that is, Giovanni was mentioning tools that they created in Bologna. So the main tool is the Comunità online portal, through which the citizens and other interested stakeholders can submit these collaboration proposals. And the portal also then manages to collect valuable information on the activities carried out within each collaboration pact. And it also allows the city to evaluate the impact of the activities carried out. I also read that the results were not only in terms of changes in the urban environment, but also in terms of governance inside the city. Because if you want a regulation like this to work, it also implies a profound change in terms of the organizational culture in the city administration, to allow the public administration to enter into relationships with informal or private actors. So some of these results are around this as well, not only changes in the city, but also in terms of the staff, for instance. or the concept of shared management that requires an internal cultural change within the administration. So in terms of management of the regulation, I wanted also to raise some points that Bologna set up an office that is dedicated to the implementation of the regulation and the following of the collaboration pacts. And it has 11 people, 5 people who are the coordination office, and a team of 6 employees who are assigned to one of Bologna's 6 districts. And at district level, they also have reference people to evaluate the collaboration proposal, who have a direct impact in the district. There is different ways the municipality is supporting the collaboration pacts and the citizens who are willing to take action. So of course it can go from financial support, but also non-financial supports, such as access to temporary use of municipal spaces, or equipment, or training, advertising, promotion, visibility. This kind of also very useful tools that the city can provide to its residents. So this is what I just wanted to raise as well in terms of more practical implementation. But if you want to know more about the regulation of Bologna, we just released case studies booklets as part of the ROC project. And this booklet is available to download. You can also read it online directly on the ROC website. So if you visit rocproject.eu, in the news section, you can find the booklet there. And we will also publish 2 others, so you can also monitor a bit our activities on this website. Now I would like also to hear from other cities, notably Turin. So Giovanni, Ferrero from Turin, I will give you the floor to present the Co-City project in Turin, which is an urban innovative action.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I will present now a Co-City project we are implementing under the Urban Innovative Actions EU initiatives that co-financed this project. Just to say something about how the project has been developed. As you may know, Urban Innovative Action financed city innovation project that are aimed to test new tools, new strategies to cope with different urban issues. In our case, with the Co-City project, we are implementing, we are testing, we are experimenting the implementation of the urban regulation, of the regulation on urban commons that we, in a way, copied. No, I mean, we take the Bologna example and we try to developing it in our city. A bit of a background you may be interested in. In Turin, there's an important resource, territorial resource, to do a project like Co-City, which is the city network of neighborhood houses. In my opinion, it is really an interesting experience of 8 different community centers, which in a way are in some way an output, in some way an outcome of different regeneration processes and programs. Some of them nationally financed, some other co-financed by the European Union, some other one simply at local level. In these very different community centers, the most important thing that these places are really places in which people interact, in which people socialize, but they are also a potential place in which projects are made, projects are implemented. I don't have time to describe them. They are diffused in the city territory, and they are different places in which very different things happens on a really daily basis. And this was an important resource when we decided to start with a project such as CoCity. Another important element in the background of this project, as I said before, is the fact that in 2016 we approved the regulation on collaboration between citizens and the city for the care, shared management, and the regeneration of urban commons, as I said, following the example of Bologna and of many other Italian cities who choose to experiment this kind of tool that allows active citizens to collaborate with the city administration. Very different kind of subject, from association, established, entities, and to informal groups. The basic idea, the two keywords, I would say, of this kind of tool are collaboration and mutual trust. As Christian Iaione was saying before, the notion of co-design, of co-management, are really the crucial issue of this kind of tool. And the pact of collaboration is the juridical, really the way in which it is formally established, this kind of cooperation between the public level and the community level. Well, basically, the project idea is quite simple. It's to experiment the new regulation on urban commons, and the idea is that taking care of public space, to implement these via a tool that is based on mutual trust is really a way to cope with this kind of fragility from the social standing point and from the territorial standing point of the city. The idea is to enable development processes towards service co-production, and to experiment new models of urban welfare. As all the project financed under the UIA initiative, the idea behind this kind of project is that you try to define a scalable model in order to support other social innovation practice. The project is managed by the city of Turin, which is the urban authority in charge of the project, with a partnership composed by the University of Turin, by the Cascina Roccafranca Foundation, which is the leader of what I mentioned before, the Neighborhood Houses Network, and a nationwide association, which is the National Association of Municipality, Italian municipality. In a nutshell, this is the budget of the project, and the duration is from March 2017 to February 2020. So we are beginning to see the end of the project. Basically, one of the way to apply, to implement, to experiment the regulation on urban commons, it is to use what the regulation in Italian calls consultazione pubblica, meaning a public, some new way of doing a public call. We did it around 3 different topics. dismissed public building. We selected some 7 public buildings in the property of the city, which are at present dismissed. Underused public spaces. Again, we selected a number of public places, building, which are at present underused, and we did a special call for schools in the property of the city. And last but not least, the third topic C, is around the care of public space and green areas. As I said before, the neighborhood houses in this kind of project have a crucial role, in the sense that after the call was issued, they did an awesome job in supporting all the community building process and all the definition of the different proposals by the local association, grassroots groups, and so on and so forth. Basically, the idea is that the innovation of this kind of call, as Christian Iaione was saying before, is that I mean, we try, even if it's difficult, because traditionally we have to use a competitive framework. We try to use a collaborative one. We try to use a collaborative framework at our best. Giving you an example that I often use, when a public administration issued a call, usually the different proposals are kept secret around the within the offices in order to protect the competition. In our case, we did it completely the other way around. When the proposals come to the city, we publish them on our website in order to collect other ideas, other proposal, other subject that wants to adhere, that wants to share the project. This is just to give you an example. This is really a gallery of places we choose. As I said, the neighborhood houses during the call gave information, because now we are in the second phase, in the co-design phase, and supporting the process of defining proposals. Of course, with very different meetings and info days and site visits, we disseminate the contents of the project. The number of proposals
Giovanni,
received is...
Can I just ask you,
yeah.
we want also to hear from Ghent, so if it's okay, you have 5 minutes left for your presentation?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah,
Thank you.
That's fine. 122 proposals, 61 admitted to the co-design phase. And this is, in a nutshell, the figures. And this is a gallery of different proposals. As I said, the co-design phase is the one in which, after we selected the proposal, we began to co-design with proponents the different pacts of collaboration. And the co-design phase ends, and now we are in the ending for most of the proposal of the co-design phase, with the definition of the text of the pact of collaboration to be approved by the city government. And so we are now looking at the second important phase, which is the co-management. Is what happens when a pact is signed and we have to co-manage what will happen in very different cases we are now implementing. And a crucial byproduct of all this process is to an innovative legal handbook and a toolkit to scale up this kind of process and methodologies. In a nutshell, this is a picture that describes the project so far. Is what I was saying before, giving some number and some idea of what we are progressing. To have other informations, you can use different media channel or write to us just to share information. Thank you very much. Sorry if I'm running a bit longer than necessary.
No, thank you. It was very interesting. Thank you very much. So just to let people know, we will take the questions at the end. So please stay online if you want to have answers to your burning questions. Christian has to leave, so thank you very much, Christian, for being here today. It was a pleasure to hear you and have your insights in this commons world. We have half an hour left, more or less, and we also want to hear from Ghent. So Dirk, the floor is yours for 5 to 10 minutes before we take some questions. And I will now make you a presenter as well, so we can see your presentation.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, and we can hear you also very nicely.
Okay, then I will try to be concise, so there is still time for questions. So Ghent, which is maybe an interesting point, is just as Bologna, vibrant city, but also with a long history. And we also have a history of progressive governments and really a strong civil society. And so one of the interesting points that came out of the report of Michel Bouwens, which I will elaborate later, is that he identified more than 500 different citizens' initiatives currently in the city. And to give one example, you see here a picture, 200 people that were celebrating the start of an energy co-op, which now 5 years later is doing really amazing stuff, like putting solar panels on the roofs of public buildings, trying to build a windmill together with the university and so on. So there's really, we really have a lot of engaged citizens willing to contribute to a more sustainable future. And city government tries to support this, enable this in different ways. And one example is what we call in Ghent the citizens budget, which is a quite new way of supporting ideas of citizens. Before, there were already subsidy lines for giving subsidies to citizens project, but before it was a bit like a black box procedure. You had to send in your application to the city hall, then you had to wait for months until the civil servants wrote an evaluation, and then wait until the political decision. So you didn't know about any other projects, there was no public debate, there was no awareness. And so the citizens budget was organized totally differently. All citizens could introduce their own plans to make their neighborhood better, and they had to put their ideas on a website so everybody could see them, discuss them, and also all citizens could vote for them. So 70% of the, let's say, the decision power in deciding which projects would proceed were decided by the citizens of the city themselves. And of the approved projects, and to the left side you see a picture of a small park, Park, people want to create. Each of these approved projects is actually at the moment a real co-creation process, where the citizens that started the project are sitting around the table with the city administration to see how to make this happen. So I think this is one of the possible ways to really not only work together with citizens about their commons project, but also strengthen the public urban debates on these topics, because also there were some citizens quite critical about some projects. So I think this is also part of City as a Commons, that we have a very open, transparent public debate on what kind of proposals are done and how they then further evolve. Another nice example of this kind of new way of cooperation is Here You See Partago. Christian spoke about daunting challenges. I think sustainable mobility is a daunting challenge for many cities. And so citizens started themselves a co-op, which is about sharing electric cars. So if you just buy a share, then you can very easily with an app use these kind of cars. And the city decided that while parking is getting more and more expensive for cars, people using these cars can park for free. So this is another example where you have a city initiative, and city government is sustaining this in a very, I think, intelligent way. A third and last example I want to give is what you see this picture, which we call living streets, which I find really amazing. Having been a city councillor myself for 20 years, I'm sure that if a mayor or vice mayor would decide top down to make a street for 2 months in summer car free, there would be a lot of protests of the citizens. But if you give the possibility of interested citizens to talk to their neighbors and to convince them that this is a great opportunity, then you get a movement which is not top down or bottom up, but is kind of interaction where citizens convince their neighbors to enable this kind of new use of the public spaces, and which then the city government enables and sustains. And so this is also a real, let's say, building block in raising the awareness that we need another use of public spaces, we need another mobility. So with these examples, I hope you have this kind of image of what things are happening in Ghent. So, because with all these active initiatives in 2017, the city government took the decision to invite Michel Bouwens to have a critical look at all the citizens' initiatives and also write reports how the city could, in a more structured way, sustain all these initiatives and develop a kind of co-creation scheme. Now, I must say, Michel, of course, knew the way the Bologna regulation works, and so he was much inspired by this regulation. And so one of the key issues he proposed for Ghent is that if you really want to establish public-civil partnerships, you have to really install new institutions and install new processes to make it a success. And to only pick a few out of them, very important proposal is you need an incubator for civic entrepreneurs, because if you look at the classical startups, they get a lot of support. You have financial support, you have juridical support, but social civic entrepreneurs, they don't really get the support they need. Secondly, he proposed to establish a chamber of the commons in Ghent, so the commoners can speak with one voice, and also they come together and elaborate on this contributive logic they find important. Thirdly, it would be very good to have specific finance at the city level. One of them is crowdfunding. We already have a public crowdfunding platform enabled by city government, which has an original, I think, way of working that if citizens are able to raise the money they have foreseen, the city government adds another amount to it. Another idea is, could we establish what Michel Bouwens calls an ethical urban bank? So these are some highlights of the transition plan Michel Bouwens made for Ghent. In 2018, last year, we had elections, which meant that the months before there was not so much new things happening. And after the elections, the beginning of this year, a new city government was established. By now, they have written and decided, voted a new urban policy plan. And the good news is that the commons is recognized as something very important in the city. The Chamber of Commons is recognized as something very relevant. And also, and that is maybe for me the most interesting, is that the specific role of civil society is recognized. And this is one and the only quote I want to give out of the new policy plan, which not only recognize the importance of civil society, but also recognize the autonomy of civil society, which also makes clear that you can at the same time sustain civil society and respect that they have a dissenting voice. It's not because you support them that you have the right to intervene in their operation. And so this is part of this new vision where trust is paramount, which I also heard mentioning from the Italian cities. And yeah, we are working on a kind of new type of relationship, a new type of cooperation. And the starting point is that the city is part of a network. And so this is, to conclude, is more my personal ending. I think the basic question is to who belongs the city? Is it only public authorities? Are it companies? No, also the citizens are part of this, a crucial part of reorganizing the city in a more just way. And for me, this fits in the frame of what I call freedom and security, which I also have written down in an essay if people are more interested in this, let's say, this frame. So this was in a nutshell the story of Ghent. We'll be happy to answer questions.
Thank you. To whom belong the city indeed? So thank you, Dirk, and thank you to all the other speakers for their very interesting presentations. So as Dirk said, now it's time for questions. We will take some questions from the audience. So audience, you can type your questions in the question panel, and we will read them and direct them to the panel. Remember just that Christian Yayone from LabGov has left the webinar, so he won't be able to answer your questions, the questions directed to him. But the other speakers are still there, online and available. So please shoot. If there's no questions from you, we have questions as well. Oops. Hula. Sorry. And we will send also the link to the recorded webinar and the presentations to all attendees, so you can also listen again or have a look at the presentations in more details. Can I ask maybe the first question then? So Dirk mentioned it just slightly, but it's true that the other regulations, so in Turin and in Ghent, were inspired by Bologna. I wanted to know, how did this transfer of knowledge and experience from Bologna to other cities happen? What was the process? So if you want to answer, maybe Giovanni from Turin?
Yes, in our case, it was quite simple. We, the very same days, I guess in 2014, we read, me and some of my colleagues in our office, we read some a paper from Christian Yayone and Gregorio Arena, and we received an information that in Bologna, they were, I mean, it was, there will have been the presentation of this new regulation. And two colleagues of mine went to Bologna, bringing information. We started to talk within our office and with our deputy mayor and so on and so forth. And so we decided that what Bologna was doing resonates a lot with the approach we were developing, and it was really coherent with the process that in our city began some 20 years ago, working on urban regeneration. And so we decided it was the moment to try to experiment this new tool.
Yes, indeed. Dirk, do you have insight from Ghent? You said that Michel Bouwens got inspired by Bologna as well.
Yeah, but I work already for many years with Michel Bouwens together on the study of the commons. So for us, it was quite obvious to keep in touch and be informed what happened. And we also invited Christian Ioni, I think already in 2016, for a lecture to Ghent. So,
so I guess if other cities want to have their own regulation or start working with commons, they should just call Christian. He seems to be the man of the situation. So we have other questions. One question from Caroline.
Sorry, may I just jump?
Yes.
Sorry, may I just jump in, adding a bit thing. The important thing, in my opinion, is that these kind of exchanges between city networking, that's what's the case in this field of the regulation of urban commons, is that there's room for developing, I mean, to routing in every context an approach which is similar but is not exactly the same, because I mean it has to be funded on what happened locally. It has to be locally based as well, so it's not simply a tool that you can copy and paste, and that's the interesting thing of it all.
Can I take another question? So from Caroline, we have a question around the experience of technology advances. So how could someone talk more about direct experience of technology advances being incorporated in the commons? If one of you can have some answers for Caroline, and could you also be a bit brief, so because we have only 10 minutes left for questions.
I can come back to the example I gave of Partago, Coop for sharing cars. They developed their own digital platform and now moved on to the European level. They started Mobility Factory, also a co-op, which has the goal of sharing their platform to all interested cities in Europe. So if citizens or cities are interested in an open digital platform, so not an Uber with extracts of value, but an open just digital platform for sharing cars, please look for them, the Mobility Factory. I think this is really an interesting case of the possibility of mutualizing existing infrastructure.
In our case, there's an ICT platform linked with the Co-City project. That I didn't elaborate on it, but it's quoted in the slides. I guess there are also some link in our website, and there's an experimentation also of an app based on blockchain, and we are also working on another project which is at the very first stage of a project around digital commons, which is the idea to use database and yes, database, shared database. But we are at the very beginning of the project, and it's outside the core city project.
I think Giovanni from Bologna wanted to add something here.
That we are also working on an idea of data as a common. So, as Giovanni was explaining, we have also in Bologna a project on that, but we are still at the beginning. The idea of using data as civic data. So we would like to build a platform for civic data. That is something more than the open data platform that the municipality has now. But I think now we can say that for our rules, the digital platform is a place for to guarantee transparency of process. So every pact is published before the final sign of the pact, and people can ask to join the pact before the signing. So it's very important for us the transparency we can give to the process through the digital platform. And the second use is for accountability. Every pact is yes, is published, and you can also see the results of every process. So at the moment, the platform is the place for transparency and the place for accountability.
Yes, thank you. And this actually links to the next question that we have from the audience. So Laura Collini asking that she says that the discourse on the commons can be at risk of being depoliticized. And she's asking how are the proposals selected actually, how the civic actors are protected, and how we can prevent co-optation when Christian talks about taking risk or entrepreneurial attitude in face of private and public actors, but the risk cannot be equal. So how actually are you selecting the proposals that are submitted in the different platforms? And I'm just sorry to be a bit annoying with this, but we have about 5-10 minutes left. So if you could just answer this question quick, that would be perfect. So more about the process of selection of the different proposals. And this is our final question, probably.
Well, in my opinion, sorry. If I can say, in my opinion, the selection of proposals, of course, has a huge technical side. So it's true that it's in a way depoliticized because you have to check feasibility, first of all. But I would say that every kind of cooperation has to be based on mutual trust, which is a trust between the institution and the entity, the proponents, the entity or the groups. And I mean, of course, it's not a given data. It's a process. It's a process. So that has a political side and an institutional technical side. So you have to work on. I mean, it's about doing something together. It's not about writing something together.
Well, I think Laura wanted to know also not only the technical aspect of it, but really how do you select them? Like you said, Giovanni, how do you like all the proposal have, if you implement them, they have to be feasible, but then how do you choose them? Probably that's why she wanted to know, and how you protect the actors as well. So Dirk, do you want to chip in?
Well, I can only sustain the view that the process is very important, and it's also, I think, as I gave the example of the citizens' budget, keep on going the public debate on the process, allowing critical voices, do it in a transparent way, is, I think, a better guarantee than trying to put everything into kind of contractual language.
Okay. Well, I hope, Laura, this answers partly your questions, but as Lucy said, if you want to know more, maybe we can connect you with one of the speakers. So I think that was our last question. We can then conclude this conversation. I wanted to thank you all very much for attending this first ROC webinar that we hosted together with Julie's Bicycle and Eurocities. The next webinar already is planned on the 25th of April, and this time we will focus on circular economy and the environmental opportunities it presents for cultural heritage. And Lucy will be your host for this one. So Lucy, maybe you want to say a few words about this next webinar?
Thanks, Cecile. Yes, please select the registration link and join us on the 25th of April. We're going to be going through the core principles of the circular economy and showcasing what local governments are doing to encourage more circular systems and projects within their cities. So if there's any content that you would like to contribute from your city, please do let us know. Thanks.
Thank you, Lucy. And the registration link is now on the screen, but we will also share it on different platforms. And you have also on the rockproject.eu, as I mentioned this earlier today, you can find the full webinar program. So if you are interested in a particular one, you have already the dates and the registration links available. After Lucy's webinar on the 25th, we'll have in May a webinar with Eindhoven, where we will discuss living labs. Something else I wanted to mention is something more for Eurocities members. So just so you know, we have every year our annual conference, and this year it's in Prague. It's taking place in November under the theme Cities at a Crossroads. And during the conference, the idea is to reflect on the new political landscape at EU level, as well as the changing landscapes in cities. And every year we organize the Eurocities Awards. This year the focus is on the transformation of cities with 3 possible entries if you want to apply. So 3 possible entries. The first one is cooperation in physical transformation. Then we have innovation for social transformation and participation to preserve our heritage. The awards entry forms must be submitted by 3rd June. But we also organize webinars again to give you more information if you are interested in this. The next one is planned on the 8th of April at 2 CET time. And during the webinars, we present the awards call in further details, and we give tips for submitting a good entry. So don't hesitate to join if you're interested in this. And you can find the link to join the webinar on the Eurocities members area. So this, sorry for the others, but it was more a message for the Eurocities members. So thank you very much. It was a very good discussion we had this morning. Thank you again to all our speakers and to our audience for being present and asking questions. And we hope to meet you soon again online on our next webinar on the 25th of April on circular economy. Thank you very much, everyone.